Hi, I'm Kevin Braddock. I'm co-founder of the Soma Space, and I'm a psychotherapist and a fitness instructor and someone who exercises. And in this short vlog, I thought I'd talk about my journey with movement for mental health, which has gone through a few sort of changes over the past sort of 20, 25 years. So I thought I'd just talk it through here. These days, what I really enjoy doing is running. I try and run 2 to 3 times a week. I ran a marathon a bit earlier this year. I also practice Tai Chi. Certainly not enough as I'd like to or should really. And I also do a bit of strength training, and this is something that I've kind of come to. I'm in my 50s now, and I've had a few sort of changes with how I exercise over the last few decades, and I thought I'd just talk them through. One thing that really changed for me when I was in my early 30s, I thought I'd buy a road bike. At school, I really didn't like exercise. I hated sport. Just wasn't into it at all. I was more of a sort of arty kid and didn't really do any exercise for quite a long time. Most of my kind of teens and 20s, I didn't really exercise at all. Bit of running, but that was about it. And in my early 30s, I was really into watching the Tour de France, the French cycling competition. And I thought, I really like this. So I bought a road bike and I bought lots of Lycra. And I shaved my legs, in fact, and got really into cycling, and the world really opened up to me. I thought this is an amazing thing to do. I used to go out with friends and went to France and did some of the big kind of alpine climbs and had a great time doing that. And then one day somebody said to me, why don't you try doing a triathlon? So for the next 3 or 4 years, I got really into triathlon racing, swimming, cycling and running. That's the order in triathlon, and felt very fit and just really enjoyed this feeling of being fit and strong and active and so on and so forth. And a bit later on, towards my early 40s, I had a breakdown when I was in my early 40s, what's technically called a major depressive episode. I have a depression diagnosis going back quite a long way, back to when I was quite young. And it was only really after that, in my early 40s, about 10 years ago now, that I really began to see how exercise itself could be a really important, helpful thing for supporting mental health and also recovering from mental illness. So in the last 10 years, I've done quite a lot of stuff. I've kind of reshaped my exercise practice around a mental health need. So these days, as I said, I try and go running 2-3 times a week, practice Tai Chi a little bit, perhaps lift some weights as well. But also without really being very hard on myself about it, not being too rigid about it, not being too disciplined, and doing it because I really enjoy doing it, and it helps me to keep relatively fit, relatively strong and pretty flexible. The other big change that happened with me was about 8 or 9 years ago. After I'd had this breakdown, I thought I really need to do something that's a bit easier on the body, and went to I was living in Bristol at the time. I saw a flyer for a Tai Chi class. I'd never done any Tai Chi. Tai Chi is a Chinese martial art. It involves moving slowly. It's basically slow Kung Fu. So I thought I'd just go along and give it a try, and I'd heard that Tai Chi was really good for breathing and kind of embodiment and coming back to oneself and so on. And that was 2015. I started going to a few classes in Bristol. Then I moved to London and I joined a school about a year or 2 later, and practiced with that school in London for about 5 or 6 years, learning what's called the form, which is a sequence of a long series of steps that you make. It's called the short form, the Yang style Tai Chi short form. And ever since then, that's been a really central part of my physical activity practice. So I've kept it up, and Tai Chi is an amazing thing to learn, as is strength training, as is running, as is boxercise, any of these things. And the more I've kind of gone into Tai Chi, the more I've noticed how it makes me flexible. It also makes me strong. It also slows me down because I tend to rush quite a lot in life. So, as I said, these days I have quite a few, let's say, tools in my arsenal to help me, manage my own mental health, and also just to keep fit and strong and keep active. This is just my journey with movement for mental health. I've tried out quite a few things, and these days I feel like I know I know some of the things that really help me. I'm always interested to try and find more. I've done a little bit of yoga in the past. I really enjoy yoga, but it hasn't quite sort of stuck with me, if that makes sense. So as I said, this is my journey with movement for mental health. Yours may look very different. If you've got something that really works for you exercise-wise that helps your mental health, please feel free to drop it in the comments. Hope you've enjoyed this vlog. There's lots more content about what we do here at the Soma Space elsewhere on this channel, workouts, exercises. Check it out.